From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on Telesur English. We begin this new edition right now. We start with more repression in Argentina, this time in the northern province of Jujuy, against sugar workers. 7 people were wounded when the police launched an attack with tear gas and rubber bullets against members of the local sugar workers' union, who had occupied a bridge. They were demanding unpaid back pay and Christmas bonuses, as well as the rehiring of 400 workers who had been sacked. 20 union leaders and activists were arrested. The daughter of one of them told of her fears for her family.
What are you asking the police?
I'm asking them not to do anything. I'm scared for all these people here and for my family as well. I really don't know why all of this is happening.
Your father works here?
Yes, my father works here and some people I know. I can go to school because of my father, because his salary is the only one that we can depend on.
And there were more protests overnight in the Argentine capital after the Congress passed President Macri's pension reform bill at dawn on Tuesday. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, has the latest from Argentina.
Sigue la tensión en la República Argentina. Comenzó el lunes con la feroz.
Tension remains high in Argentina. It began on Monday with a ferocious repression by the security forces against those protesting against the pension reform. There were pot-banging protests that night which were repeated on Tuesday. It's worth remembering that the 19th and 20th of December are emblematic days in Argentina, because in 2001, those were the days which put an end to the government of De la Rúa, with 33 dead across the country. The repression has moved now to the north of Argentina, to Jujuy, where workers at the Esperanza sugar mill are demanding unpaid wages, end-of-the-year bonuses, and against the sacking of 400 workers. They were severely repressed by the police of Governor Gerardo Morales, with tear gas and rubber bullets, with many arrested. There is a lot of tension in the north, where we should remember that the activist Milagro Sala is detained. Today there was a forum for democracy and the release of political prisoners. 18 people have now been detained arbitrarily, so democracy seems to be weakened, ever less respected for legal rights, and people taking to the streets to demand respect for the constitutional guarantees, and that the economy cuts should not affect the poorest, as is the case with this week's reform by the government of Mauricio Macri. Back to you in the studio.
That was Sabrina Roth from Argentina. 2 former executives at Ford, accused of helping the Argentine military kidnap and torture workers, were put on trial on Tuesday. Former Ford factory director Pedro Mueller and ex-security manager Héctor Francisco Jesus Sevilla are accused of allowing the kidnapping and torture of 24 workers from the U.S. firm during Argentina's 1976 through 1983 dictatorship. The trial is expected to last for months. The foreign ministers of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay are meeting in Brasilia to agree the agenda for Thursday's Mercosur summit. The summit is expected to discuss economic integration and a planned free trade agreement with the European Union. Bolivia and Guyana are expected to take part as associate members of the bloc. President Evo Morales is due to present a report on the progress of the Interoceanic Railway project. And in Honduras, where the opposition candidate Salvador Nasralla has agreed to talk with President Juan Orlando Hernández, after the Electoral Court declared Hernández the winner of last month's election. But Nasralla continues to insist that he won, and says the talks should be about holding new elections.
First, I want to say that my success in the presidential elections in Honduras on 26th of November is the result of the firm expression and free will of the majority of the Honduran people.
And opposition supporters have held another night of protests against what they see as fraud in the counting of the votes. The police fired tear gas at them as they set up roadblocks in several parts of the capital and other cities. Human rights groups have denounced the action of the police, including what they say is the torture of detained protesters. Some opposition protesters say they do not believe in any dialogue with President Hernández.
We are continuing with our indignation, with this, until now, peaceful blockade. Our protests are always like this, until the repressive teams of state that serve the president, who is stealing the elections on November 26, appear.
Our dignity has been stolen. Our vote has been stolen. I did not vote for Juan Orlando Hernández. I voted for the opposition alliance, for the government of Salvador Nasralla, the president elected by the people.
How are we going to believe in a call for dialogue from a man, President Juan Orlando Hernández, who does not understand dialogue, who only offers death and violence and lies and fraud to the country?
Human rights organizations say 26 people have died in Honduras during the demonstrations since the presidential election on November 26. According to the organizations, these deaths were the result of violent repression by the police and the military. They also accuse Honduras government of complicity with these actions. Nicolás Maduro has criticized the actions of right-wing governments in the region. He highlighted the neoliberal measures hitting Argentina and condemned the post-electoral situation in Honduras.
What can Argentina offer to its people, especially after the International Monetary Fund imposed several economic measures? And look what is happening in Honduras. They faced a coup in 2009 and now they are facing a coup once again. An electoral fraud with thousands of deaths and hundreds wounded and arrested. The whole world, as well as the Organization of American States, said there was an electoral fraud and that elections should be held again.
Peru's President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski says he will address the nation later on Wednesday. That's before he testifies on Congress on Thursday over his alleged links with the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. Our correspondent Verónica Insausti has more.
Tomorrow, President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski will appear in Congress to testify on the Odebrecht case. He will be granted 60 minutes to present evidence regarding the accusations linking him to the Brazilian construction company. He is accused of receiving money from Odebrecht between 2004 and 2006 while working as Prime Minister for the government of Alejandro Toledo. Peru's constitution says that it is a crime against the public administration to sign contracts with businesses working for the state while being a public servant. In this sense, Kuczynski is accused of benefiting himself with almost $800,000. After his appearance in Congress, the members will have to decide if they will proceed with the impeachment. In order to do so, they need 87 votes, although so far, 90 congressmen have said they will vote in favour of the impeachment. It's important to note that the President of the Supreme Court of Justice, Duberly Rodriguez, has said he received 14 constitutional complaints against the process from different people, among them President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski himself. If the Supreme Court accepts those complaints, the decision from Congress will have no effect. The court has 3 days to put these complaints into effect. Meanwhile, General Secretary of the Organization of American States, Diego Almagro, has said they received requests regarding the unconstitutional impeachment process, as he defined it. Almagro has decided to send OAS delegates to Peru to oversee the process. Combined, these two legal actions could put a stop on the impeachment process against President Kuczynski. We will keep you informed.
That was Verónica Insausti from Peru. Brazil's Lava Jato operation, which investigates the cases of bribery and corruption surrounding Petrobras, has been held up as a symbol of the fight against corruption. However, some lawyers have reported irregularities in the process, which suggests the investigation has turned into a political tool.
Irregularities in the Lava Jato investigation have come to light with the declarations of Rodrigo Tacla Duran before a Senate committee. He is the lawyer of Odebrecht, one of the main companies involved.
There has been abuse of power in Lava Jato. Zucoloto, a friend of Judge Moro, proposed to Duran that he pay money to make negotiations easier with some of the parties in the scheme. Tacla Duran finally decided not to accept this deal because they were even trying to make him admit to crimes he did not commit.
For the ex-Minister of Justice, Eugenio Aragão, The Lava Jato operation, which was in the beginning something positive to fight corruption, is now an instrument with irregularities that goes beyond Brazil's borders.
Behind this, there is an obvious cooperation, wider than what this group has with the US government. We see this with its performance in Venezuela, with their actions in Peru, with their actions in Ecuador, where the progressive governments or those who belong to them are systematically accused of corruption and complicity with Odebrecht and others in the bribery network.
Members of the Oil Workers Union say that apart from the political impact, the Lava Jato investigation is affecting the economic and industrial development of Brazil.
In the petroleum sector alone, 2 million jobs have gone, and overall more than 10 million people have been made unemployed. This is just an example of what Lava Jato means. As Brazilians and workers, we believe that the Lava Jato is no longer about fighting corruption, but a means of handing over Brazil's mineral resources, our oil and our industry.
Legal experts say the case of Lula da Silva is perhaps the clearest reflection of how the operation goes beyond its constitutional powers and becomes a weapon of political persecution.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. And another journalist has been murdered in Mexico, the 12th this year. 35-year-old Gumaro Perez, who regularly wrote about security and drug trafficking, was shot 4 times and killed in Veracruz State as he attended a Christmas party at his son's school. 2017 has been the deadliest year so far for media workers in Mexico.
I will want that above all else justice be done, that these assailants be arrested because it's not possible for them to be allowed to go on killing like it's nothing. They have no respect. 6-year-old children are traumatized because the way my husband was killed, where he was, where we all were, how it was done.
Our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez, has more on the violence against journalists.
So with the killing of Gumaro Perez Aguilando, the number of murdered journalists in Mexico goes all the way up to 12. And some organizations such as Journalists Without Borders and Article 19 have pointed out that Mexico is now officially the second most dangerous country to be a journalist, just coming second only to Syria. But the difference is that Syria, with 12 down journalists this year too, has an open war conflict going on, and Mexico does not. Gumaro Perez worked for a small paper in the southern state of Veracruz, and the same paper was home to another murdered journalist just a couple of months ago, and 2 more that are disappeared. The investigations are going on, but so far they have no results, which is the same that happens in 99.5% of the investigations of crimes against journalists. So impunity is here the big problem, and that's why there are so many crimes against the freedom of speech in Mexico. This is the situation. So far, we go back to you.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico. 11 people have been killed in a bus crash as the bus carrying tourists from a U.S. cruise ship to an archaeological site in Mexico crashed after running off the road. Another 20 people were injured in the accident, which happened in Quintana Roo, located on the eastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula near Cancun. Nationalities of the fatalities reportedly include Italians and Canadians. Another social leader was killed in Colombia on Monday. Social organizations say that over 160 leaders were killed in 2017 alone. Our correspondent Lorena Hoyo has more in this report.
164 social leaders were killed in 2017 alone in Colombia. The most recent murder was registered this Monday. This time, the victim was Adolfo Perez. president of Junta de Acción Comunal, located in Pan de Azúcar, part of the municipality of Patie in the department of El Cauca. Perez was shot several times. Social leaders are worried about the lack of security guarantees and government measures to protect their lives. Civilians are also outraged about these events, and in particular, about the declarations made by the Ministry of Defense. Luis Carlos Villegas, who said the majority of these murders were the consequence of personal problems, neighbor conflicts, and illicit businesses the victims carried. Social organizations harshly criticized and rejected the declarations. At the same time, human rights organizations say that the ministry's words stigmatize and re-victimize those killed, and above all, deny the real tragedy that is happening in Colombia, the political violence leaders are facing, and the fact that they are targeted for defending their land and the peace process in the country. Social organizations are asking the justice system to investigate the Ministry of Defense for what he has said.
That was Lorena Hoyos from Colombia. Venezuela's foreign minister is in China to strengthen economic ties. Jorge Arreaza tweeted, "An extraordinary meeting with State Councilor Yang Jiechi. We reviewed our bilateral relationship and China's relation with our region, as well as the roles of both countries in the world, based on cooperation and multilateralism." A grassroots movement of community media in Venezuela is providing an alternative to the dominance of commercial channels. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, went along to one community radio to find out more.
Radio Libre Negro Primero is a 24-hour radio station that provides for the Saria community of Caracas. It broadcasts a whole range of programming, with topics ranging from the history of Haiti to where you can buy bread at an affordable price. Run solely by volunteers, the station is a space where everyone can have a say.
I think that is a way to be informed about everything that happens around us. We keep the community informed about what happens in the world through the radio.
Community media is one of three types of media defined in Venezuelan law. As opposed to public and private, community stations like Negro Primero run autonomously. All the funding it receives comes from inside the channel, quite literally. The channel has its own bakery, where residents from Saria make bread to be sold at prices which are affordable. In between making bread, community members also produce school uniforms, which are provided for their local school. With these small fundings, the station can survive.
Todo lo que hacemos está sostenido.
All what we do is autonomous and self-sustained. During the last 5 years, we have emphasized on self-management, because we saw that the community radios cannot survive just by volunteers on these moments of economic war. Everything is very expensive, things like a microphone or equipment. So what have we done? We have created productive communities, making the community able to contribute to the project.
As of the year 2000, a Telecommunications Act put in place by the government declared that directors of community media cannot be party officials, members of the military, or be a part of mass private media. Stations must also provide training to the community, so whether it's ways of fighting crime in the neighborhood or phone-ins from residents who have specific issues they want to be raised, this station is accessible to everyone who needs it most. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Bolivian doctors have clashed with police forces while protesting a new criminal code which could penalize doctors who cause health or bodily harm through negligence. Medical professionals tried to make their way to the government palace where they demanded to meet with President Evo Morales. National senators and social leaders said that medical strike is politically motivated.
This demonstration is clear evidence that medical union representatives are also a part of several political parties. They respond to a political agenda.
And it's time for soul-searching for the center-left parties in Chile after their defeat in Sunday's election. The right-wing former president and billionaire Sebastián Piñera beat their candidate by almost 10%. We have more details in the next report.
For the third time, President Michelle Bachelet and Sebastián Piñera will meet in the National Congress in March for the swearing of the new presidency. That's why on Tuesday morning, the current leader visited the home of the elected president for a working meeting to discuss current projects and to coordinate the transition.
It's still too early to come up with any conclusions. The truth is that we have a democratic system, and in a democratic system, people decide and government respects that. What we should do is facilitate things so that the elected government can start with all the information it needs.
There have been days for reflection, with the candidate of the new majority coalition making a sharp self-analysis after losing in the second round. He called for unity among the progressive forces.
In the meeting with the new presidents of the parties of the new majority, so far, which are part of the progressive movements, there was a willingness and an awareness of the need to come together more than ever and work to have a solid progressive position in Congress.
This as a part of a restructuring of the center-left after a defeat that forces them to deepen relations with the broad front and social movements, which are today growing, given the return of a right-wing government.
There's a worldwide view in which Chile is not an exception, of course. This is a major setback, it's an obstacle, and we will have to wait a little longer. But the activists of civil society, regardless of our political position, will continue every day as if Alejandro Aguirre had won.
Free education, tax reforms, and other economic measures are some of the issues that still remain uncertain, given the potential changes that could be made to reform programs of President Michelle Bachelet. The new composition of the Congress will be key for these further discussions.
Today, who will be in Sebastián Piñera's team will be fundamental. The people he selects for the Interior Ministry, the ones he chooses for the Ministry of the Secretary of Presidency, which oversees the relation with the Parliament, and a process of dialogue, of discussion and negotiation.
What is clear is that today Sebastián Piñera returns to the government's palace with the largest percentage of votes for the right since the return of democracy. The issues and responsibility of the current government in this defeat are just some of the questions the center-left will have to reflect on.
Volcano photographer Dr. Richard Roscoe has documented the spectacular eruption of an active volcano early December in the Amazonian Andes of Ecuador, known as Reventador. Roscoe captured the fiery explosions with wide-angle lenses and then sped up the video to show the activity over the course of a 3-day period. Reventador's last recorded major activity was in 2002, when a huge eruption occurred and generated a 17-kilometer-high eruption cloud, wiping out a nearby valley. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. The European Union launched a process to suspend Poland's voting rights in the EU, accusing the country of pushing changes to the judiciary that could undermine its court's independence. The European Commission says these reforms constitute a clear risk of a serious breach of EU values and has given Poland 3 months to remedy the situation. Meanwhile, thousands of people have protested in Warsaw and all around the country against the proposed reforms. And now let's take a look at some other news from around the world.
The Republican U.S. Senate has approved a sweeping $1.5 trillion tax bill, moving their party and President Donald Trump a step closer to the largest overhaul of the U.S. tax code in more than 30 years. The Republicans say that the tax cuts for corporations and small businesses will bolster economic growth.
I want to start off by thanking the American people, our constituents, for sending us here to do this work for them. This is one of the most important pieces of legislation that Congress has passed in decades to help the American worker, to help grow the American economy. This is profound change, and this is change that is going to put our country on the right path. For all those millions of men and women in America who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are struggling to get ahead, help is on the way. For all those businesses that are tied with one hand behind their back in this global economy, having a hard time compete, help is on the way.
Democrats who all voted against it say the package is a deficit bloating giveaway to the super-rich.
What a disgrace. That's what this bill is. It's an absolute disgrace. It's not just an ideological difference. It is something dramatically opposite of what America needs. There is no reason for a single middle-class family to pay more while every single corporation pays less. If you wanted to help the middle class, give them a real tax break. The rich get far more dollars back than the middle class. That is fact, irrefutable fact.
The European Union has set the end of the United Kingdom's Brexit transition to December 31st, 2020. Both sides have yet to negotiate the terms for the transition period, which the UK calls an implementation phase. Cardinal Bernard Law, the former Archbishop of Boston, who became a symbol of the Roman Catholic Church's worldwide sexual abuse scandals, has died at the age of 86. The Vatican said Law, whose resignation from his Boston post in 2002 shocked the church and brought abuse into the open. He had been living in Rome and was in declining health in recent years. The European Court of Justice has ruled that Uber is officially a transport company and not a digital service. The ride-hailing firm argued it was not a cab firm but an information society service. The case came after Uber was told it has to obey local taxi rules in Barcelona. Under EU law, the company must be classified as a service in the field of transport.
This is the time of the year when Mexicans take out their festive spirits by smashing piñatas. The piñatas are made from clay or cardboard, and once broken, they release a shower of sweets, nuts, and fruits. Some say it symbolizes the releasing of virtue from the clutches of the devil. The tradition goes back centuries, but it is uncertain if it has Aztec origins or if it came first from China and was brought by the European conquistadores. 84-year-old Hilton Ferreira dos Santos is Rio de Janeiro's only black professional Santa Claus and has become an important symbol in a country where racial inequalities are still very present. Dos Santos obtained his diploma from Rio de Janeiro's Santa Claus School in 2013 and was the only black graduate that year. He does 3 to 4 performances a year and offers free shows for schools and favelas. Dos Santos is a retired communication technician, and he also composes music for samba schools. And the Tivoli amusement park in central Copenhagen, Denmark, has been dressed for Christmas with 1 million lights and festive decorations. Visitors can now see a single tree covered in over 35,000 fairy lights. Rides and buildings have also been covered in lights. Christmas in Tivoli opened on November 18th and will run until December 31st. And we've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Sign of resistance to hatred and injustice, Bill Fletcher Jr. conducts a discussion and analysis space to reveal the social struggles of Black people on the global effort